the person who may very well be running the country, you know, kind of like we used to say, President Blinken. Well, here's President Rubio making a statement at a press conference regarding how this all got started and where we are now.
Conducted this operation with a very clear goal in mind. I haven't got a chance to see a lot of reporting. I don't understand what the confusion is. Let me explain it to you, and I'll do it once again as clearly as possible. Perhaps you'll report it that way. The United States is conducting an operation to eliminate the threat of Iran's short-range ballistic missiles and the threat posed by their Navy, particularly to naval assets. That is what it is focused on doing right now, and it's doing quite successfully. I'll leave it to the Pentagon and the Department of War to discuss the tactics behind that and the progress that's being made. That is the clear objective of this mission. The second question that's been asked is, why now? Well, there's two reasons why now. The first is it was abundantly clear that if Iran came under attack by anyone, the United States or Israel or anyone, they were going to respond and respond against the United States. The orders had been delegated down to the field commanders. It was automatic, and in fact, it bared to be true because, in fact, within an hour of the initial attack on the leadership compound, the missile forces in the south and in the north, for that matter, had already been activated to launch. In fact, those had already been pre-positioned. The third is the assessment that was made that if we stood and waited for that attack to come first before we hit them, we would suffer much higher casualties. And so the president made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces.
So he's admitting that Israel was going to attack Iran. Preemptive attack on Iran, and here we are.
Hey, Peter, I know you follow these things closely, and that was one of the rumors that were out there, you know, pre-attack, was that Israel was going to attack first, drawing us in. Now, this is something that was created by the Likud party in Israel, something that we mimicked during the Iraq war, and it's called anticipatory self-defense, meaning we're going to predict that we're going to be attacked, so we're going to do it first. That is the playbook of the Israelis, and we borrowed that in our war with Iraq. But let me just tell you something. Let me just get this out right now. Lies, lies, lies on top of lies. And what I've been telling folks, Peter and Jen, is that, you know, the Iraq war, the Bush administration, they lied us into that war. Shame on them. But at the same time, we've been lied into this war with Iran, which is the final phase of what they've been planning for decades. I must say, shame on us, meaning the American citizens of the United States of America, for some of us to be fooled again. As you know, the polls are stating that most Americans are against this war. And it makes me feel good that maybe some of the things I've done, the Eisenhower Media Network has done, and people like yourselves have done, it did awaken, you know, the American people. Now, the thing we must do now, what are we going to do about it to convince our Congress? And I must tell you, you know, people, it comes to a point we may need to be marching literally in the streets, and the Congress need to lead that. And when I'm talking about the Congress need to lead, that's not those bought and paid for. Well, unfortunately, the majority of our Congress is that way. But if they start seeing we as citizens, the tide turning more so than it has in the past, that's going to be the only way we're going to stop this. Because I will tell you, you know, in my book, Daily Betrayal, I talk about, you know, Iran being the last phase. But there's some things that I couldn't talk about. As you know, that book was heavily redacted. But, you know, you got to ask yourself, after Iran, what's next? You know, they've already been talking about certain forms of Turkey. Turkey absolutely does not like Israel. So now you've heard former leaders from Israel talking about, well, you know, Turkey is a threat to us. So where does it end? We must stop it now. You know, I've been telling folks, I feel like a failed person, because my goal in getting in this crusade was to, you know, to stop the war against Iran. I knew it was going to happen. I've seen the playbook. When I say I've seen the playbook, literally, you know, just think about Daniel Ellsberg and the Pentagon Papers. Well, that's what I was a part of, you know, during my last time physically in the Pentagon. And I saw the playbook that goes all the way back to decades, with Iran being the last phase of this. And I will tell you, the reason it was the last phase is that because of the fact they were always scared of Iran. Why? Because of those ballistic missiles you were hearing about. You know, as part of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA, better known as the Iran nuclear deal. the so-called neocons and the warmongers, the reason they was against that Iran nuclear deal because they wanted the ballistic missiles included. So they convinced President Trump to tear up that deal, which Iran was abiding by. You know, that's the unfortunate thing. But let me just share this with you, how we got to this war, because of the fact, as I stated, they saved Iran for last. Why? Scared of the ballistic missiles. So what were they going to do? This is a fact. I think it's on page 58 and 59 of my book, where I laid it all out because I saw the playbook. Because of the ballistic missiles, they were going to try to cause internal unrest, destabilizing Iran within and outside. And think about the son of the last Shah of Iran now saying, I can be that person to go in there and, oh, by the way, be a friend of Israel in the United States. It reminds me, if you go back, when I said I've seen the playbook, it's just being repeated. You know, during the first phase with the Iraq war, you know, you had the primary starters, the A-team, Wolfowitz, Richard Pearl, Doug Feith, and we'll end it with John Bolton, the true leaders of this neoconservative march to war. Now what you have Trump bought and paid for by the Zionists, the Israeli lobby, and then you have his administration bought and paid for by way of Hegseth and the guy you just showed, Rubio. And so that's where we are right now. I've seen the playbook, and you know, like I said, I feel failed because we're here now. And you know, the book, you know, Deadly Betrayal, we've already seen 6 casualties from the American side of the house. But more importantly, and I'm always challenged about this, I want to make sure people that have commented about this are so right. Think about the thousands of Iraqis that have died. Think about the thousands of Iranians that may possibly die. And that's already started with the hit on the doggone school.
My understanding is they've hit 3 schools. They've hit 3 schools already.
And how about this? This is the Israeli playbook. We saw it in Gaza. How about the hitting of hospitals? What is that all about? They don't care.
Iran doesn't do it. But, you know, I've been saying for a long time that the only reason that we've gotten as far as we have and Israel has existed as long as it has is by the good grace of Iran. And the fact that we just assassinated the person who was standing between them and a nuclear weapon.
Absolutely.
Just showed, right, of course. So, and they know that, which means what they're really trying to do is facilitate it so that Iran is trying to get a nuclear weapon because they think somehow that will justify what they're doing, but it won't.
Well, let me just say this. The Ayatollah, the former Ayatollah who's now deceased, you know, he put out a fatwa that, hey, we will not have, you know, nuclear weapons because, in fact, he saw it as a sin. But I can tell you, they didn't need nuclear weapons because of the ballistic missiles. They didn't need it. And that's why they would never get rid of those ballistic missiles because, as we can see now, as I stated in my book as well, page 146, that was their lifeline. They were not going to lose that. And we can see now. You know, I don't know where this thing is going to head. You know, a lot of people have been asking me. As we were coming on air, I'm sure you all saw this. Our embassy in Saudi Arabia has just been hit. I don't know if y'all was aware of that and saw that.
No, I knew that they were hitting bases. I knew that several bases had been hit. I know that they've been protesting at embassies, but no, I didn't know it was hit.
No. Our embassy in Saudi Arabia has been hit now as well. And those are targets because of the fact, you know, as I stated, Iran see this as their lifeline. This is truly a threat to their country, not to the so-called regime, but to their country.
It is going to be very interesting to see how the messaging turns very quickly. It also goes to show you how this can escalate into something extremely devastating very quickly. The fact that France has committed to supporting Israel is, again, how much closer to a world war do you want to get? China has made it very clear that they are backing Iran, as is North Korea. I know Russia has its own problems, but they're probably going to back Iran as well. And this also leads to what BRICS has been all about, which is taking down this Western hegemony. And at the end of the day, the Zionist takeover of our government could not be more obvious, even to the layperson who barely pays attention to politics. The question is, how much longer is the average American going to be willing to put up with this before they say we've had enough? And we do not want any type of attachment to the state of Israel anymore. Once that happens, Israel's finished. So
absolutely.
That's the question now. How long before the American people rise up and say, we're not going to allow Israel to drag us to hell with them?
Unfortunately, it's going to take, and sadly, it's going to take more deaths. And as I stated now, deadly betrayal, there's been 6 that have been killed already. And they've already said, let me just share this with you too. The Pentagon, the Department of Defense, not the Department of War, well, probably should be called that because that's all we do. But I just don't like it because Hegseth came up with that because of his little ego, young self. They don't actually release the true numbers of deaths. It could be special operations going on. So my personal opinion now is I tell you, I give you facts, assumptions, and opinions. This is just an assumption that I think there's been more deaths. I really do. And they're preparing, and the way they're wording it, expect more deaths. I think that so it's going to take that. And then, as we're seeing right now, the gas of price, the price of gas has gone up already. Also, the Iranians have announced now that the Strait of Hormuz is closed. And they may not have, blocked it, but it's closed because they will attack any ship that goes through there. And so prices of gas went up today. You will see it go extremely high tomorrow. And so when MAGA see that the price of gas is going up and everything else is going up, along with unfortunately, I hate to use this term, the body bags that may start coming in, that's going to change. And I will tell you, my hope is, the midterms would change it. And that will be, after the midterms, the end of President Trump's as our so-called president.
Well, we put out a clip the other day basically saying that J.D. Vance, there's a very high likelihood that they're just going to figure out a way to replace Trump after the midterms with Vance. I mean, he is Peter Thiel Palantir's pick. And at the end of the day, you can't sell Trump anymore. I mean, he's losing support left and right. And plus, his health is clearly terrible. So there's something to be said for what's coming. And I also want to point out, just came across the wire this afternoon, around now, the Korean Prime Minister Kim Jong-un has issued a statement. If Iran asks, we will provide the missiles necessary against Israel. 1 missile is enough to erase it. So there you go.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like one lunatic to, get involved with, let's add that guy to the mix. Sure. What could go wrong?
Is it really just a question? I mean, listen, we've talked about this. You can make a lot of different cases against Trump during his first term, but for the most part, he was controlled chaos. There was a lot of things he did, but he never really went off the rails. And he had an extremely cordial relationship with Kim Jong-un. And this is why I despise neoliberalism just as much, if not more, than neoconservatism, because it was anti-Trump no matter what he did, no matter what he said. And all of the Democratic Party leaders like, how dare he talk to Kim Jong-un? Let me tell you, now Kim Jong-un is on the other side, and you're going to wish that you were making nice with him. Do you really think it's just a question of the Epstein files? Is that really the difference between Trump's first term and second term, or do you think there's more to it than that?
No. I think it's more to it than that. But I would say that maybe the Epstein files, somehow is mixed into this. No, I think this is truly about, Trump bragged about doing his first run for president. Hey, I don't need anybody's money. I'm going to, self-fund my campaign. Well, then after he lost, he wanted to make sure he won. So he had to make some deals with the devil. And as you all know already, Marion Ellison, I think it was 20 million or more, dollars, $100 million that she donated to the campaign cause, I will say, and others. And I think he's tied into that. He's now become bought and paid for, along with Bibi, pushing him, Bibi Netanyahu. And I will tell you that, no, I think it's more than the Epstein files, because I think even without the Epstein files being in the equation, this would have happened. You take that to the bank, this would have happened. Now, when I say I can give you assumptions, opinions, and facts, this is a fact because I've seen the playbook, literally.
Yeah, you know what? I agree. I think the key difference between his first term and his second term is the most obvious difference, which is 8 years. and how aging exponentially he is. I think that his mind is not where it was. I think that he's able to be controlled in a different way by the people around him. I think that it's not as much him as it was the first time. I think he was a lot more in control of stuff the first time than he actually is now. I think now he gets very bad information purposefully. I think that he just listens to whoever's whispering in his ear. And I don't think he's that bright.